Hello everyone and welcome back to the next edition of the webinar series hosted at the Ball State Center for Professional Selling, where this is part 2 of a webinar, to be honest part 3 of a webinar series that we've had with Ball State alum and best-selling author Mo Bunnell, author of the book which is the Snowball System and how to win more business and turn clients into raving fans. In the couple of webinars before, we had Mo discuss some of the key aspects, the foundations of the book and foundations of what it means to build and be a right kind of salesperson, build your business, and hopefully you'll get on to have more raving fans out there. So now we're going to get into the practical parts of it. We're going to get into aspects of how do we put this into action, right? And now we're going to start talking about getting prospects and turning them into clients. Mo, thank you again and welcome back.
Oh, I love it. I'm having so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. Mo, one of the things we talk about when we talk about turning prospects into clients, you talk about give to get. And I thought it was very, very interesting because you mostly associate salespeople with getting.
Yeah.
You don't think of giving. So can you give a little bit more of a heads up as to why you thought this was important and what should salespeople be doing?
Oh man, well, we could do 5 webinars just on this topic. I'm so passionate about it. You know, I think the idea of giving first does a bunch of things. One is it's hard for a client to have an initial meeting and then hire you for a lot of stuff, right? Our joke about that is it's like getting married on the first date. It doesn't really work very well. You look a little desperate if you're trying to get married on the first date. So what giving does is it lets you date a while. And a great give to get is one that has 3 big criteria. It's relatively easy for you to do as the salesperson or the business developer. It has a lot of value to the prospect, so they would say yes to it. Think of like a 2-hour meeting where you're going to provide really, really deep insights on a study that you did, your organization did, that no one else has gotten yet. Like that would be an idea of a really valuable thing. So that's easy for you. The study's already done. It's valuable for them. And then the third piece, and this is critical and what most nice organizations miss if they do give to gets already, is the third criteria is it has to be designed so it leads to creating demand for you. So we don't want to have just gives all over the place that aren't designed to do anything. Those are great relationship tools maybe, but they might not probably wouldn't create demand for your services. We want to line them up so that at the end of it, the person wants to hire you.
Fantastic. And I think this is spot on because it's interesting we talk about this as an organization, you need to be doing it. As a salesperson, you need to be doing this. And right now, I'm teaching a class on Salesforce technology. And we're talking about what we call persona-driven marketing, which has got everything to do with how do I actually even give content per persona that we're talking to in the customer's organization, and how technology can aid you in that. But the key thing is you need to have an idea about who that persona is even though you might have that information, I need to ask myself, is that person in that organization ready for the kind of content? So I think what my takeaway is, yes, you need to give, of course, initially to eventually get back, but we should be smart about also giving it to the right people at the right time, and make sense that in today's day and age where people just have way too much information, people are constantly busy, that we need to make sure that we give them the content at the right time when it is relevant, or you run the risk of it being set aside, even though your intentions are good. So it's not that they will not give you some credit for the good intentions, but it defeats the purpose of what you want to do, is to actually use that as a kind of a leverage, part of your flywheel, to eventually go build that momentum to get business. Does this make sense what I'm talking here?
It totally does. In fact, we just gave we got a series of keynote speeches we're giving for one of the biggest healthcare payers in the country. And we're doing these as it's their time of year where they're getting everybody together. So 1,200 people will hear this message. And it's all about creating curiosity with your give to get. So the idea is that to your point around 4 personas, the 4 that we use are based on the Herman Brain Dominance Instrument, which are people that love data, people that love process, people that love relationships, and people that love new ideas. So the great give to get has those 3 criteria we talked about, but it also will pick the one that links up with the receiver of the information. So they're really excited about it. So a great give to get around somebody who loves process might be, hey, we've got a totally new way to do open enrollment at our healthcare organization. And I'd be happy to share that with you. And we've taken what used to be 14 steps, we've got it down to 7. We've validated it. It works even better using our app or some other things. And I'd be happy to share that with you. Well, the person might be really, that loves process, would love to hear how you get 14 steps to 7 in a way that works better. And now it's easy for you, valuable for them. And that third criteria, it's leading to you to get hired more often because you're the only one that's been able to do that. And you're giving first to get the meeting that at the end of it, you're hoping that that plan sponsor or broker or consultant says that the healthcare company work with, you're hoping that intermediary, that direct buyer would say, gosh, does this work in the healthcare plans we would hire you for? It sure does.
Indeed.
And now you're creating demand.
Indeed.
So I might have gone on a little bit too long there, but does that resonate?
No, absolutely. Because for me, there's another component to it, which I really think was interesting, is you also gain, not that you want to do it, overtly, but you also gain a kind of leverage over your customer or your prospect, because you've actually given them something. And now, at the least, they're going to tell you, if they're not going to do business with you, why they're not going to do business with you. At least they're going to give you that, because you've given them something that at least you're going to get feedback, rather than if you just go in there and just slam the phone on you. So for me, from that perspective, if nothing else, you gain a little bit of that power in that relationship, because now you are on the up. And essentially, that's what we say in terms of the social exchange there. You just gave them something, and they might want to reciprocate that. And that's a very smart way of dealing that as well. So from a psychological angle, I think there's something interesting in this as well. Now, you also have to be smart about that as well. No, I think your answer leads me to my next question, which is actually, all of this is great, but when you talk about developing leads, right? So since you're talking about prospects and stuff like that, when we have the leads, one of the things you say is give to get. That is great. But you have something which I think, which I thought was very interesting. We always talk about you shouldn't mix friends with business or kinds of stuff. And you then go on to say turning friends into clients. So I've heard of turning clients into friends. So I would be very curious to see what your thoughts on why you came up with turning friends into clients.
Yeah, so for broader context, I'm so happy you chose that one, because that's where a lot of people get hung up. And for broader context, that chapter about lead generation covers 9 key ways that somebody can generate a lead. One of the 9 is turning friends into clients.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing I think about this one is sometimes people will revolt at this idea. Well, I can't turn my friends into clients. But then those are the same people that when they get a client, they try to get spouses together and go do social things to turn them into friends. So if we want to turn clients into friends, why wouldn't we turn friends into clients? And the idea is that usually the linchpin between, I really like somebody, maybe I went to Ball State Business School together or whatever, we've remained friends, but we haven't commercially transacted together, even though we could. Well, a lot of times the bridge between we're just friends to we're friends and business associates is a give to get, where we might go to them and say, gosh, really, we've known each other X many years, 20 years, 30, 40, whatever it is. And, as part of my organization, I get to determine where we invest in some of our prospects. And you work for prospect ABC that would be a great fit for us. And we would be elated to invest in our relationship. Doesn't even have to be me. Our expert in your industry is actually Sally. And I talked to Sally about this, said how much I enjoy being around you. And I asked her if she would invest 2 hours of her time to have a meeting totally on us to discuss topic number 1. Yeah. And I thought that'd be a lot of fun. And I'd like to attend if you'd be game. What do you think? And there I'm trying to start with somebody that already loves maybe me as an individual, but doesn't love our organization yet, and trying to bring somebody else in to do a give to get, just like we talked about before. And we're going to use that as the bridge to go from friend only to friend and a commercial relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, that's one of those things which is, I've always thought about how would you do that, but I love the idea of maybe you introduce somebody within your organization to do it for you. In that way, you still maintain your relationship. I think that's a very, very smart way. But I think what struck me was this when I combine this with what we discussed in our first webinar, is with technology these days, it's easier for you also to keep track of where your friends are. So you may lose touch with some of your friends. And I remember us having this discussion where you
Right.
very distinctly also said, it's great to have your friends and you can connect on LinkedIn, but if you have not talked to that what was a friend before for 10 years, and then you have to be very gradual, you have to be very subtle in also building that, rather than just go in and say, hey, listen, hey, suddenly you become a VP of something, so it looks like you're a prospect. So you literally will come off as sounding very, very opportunistic.
Right.
And I think that is spot on when you say this is great. I think my organization can help yours. But guess what? Because we are friends, I value our friendship too much. Let me introduce you to somebody else. And I love that part. And because genuinely at that point in time, at least your friend is going to know that you are going to be looking out for them. And the moment you say, that's how I understand it. The moment I say, I'm not going to be in the lead on this and somebody else, what they're going to say is that you put your friendship, but you would not introduce somebody else within your own organization to them if you truly did not believe that your organization and your offering can genuinely help your customers. Does it make sense what I'm saying actually?
Totally.
Indeed.
Totally.
For
And a
me,
real, go ahead.
sorry. So no, for me that is what I was thinking, because I link it back to what you had said earlier, and I was chuckling when I said I suddenly have friends from 15, 20 years ago who suddenly now on LinkedIn or on Facebook suddenly have gone on to do great things, and they pop up, and then suddenly you say, wait a minute, maybe they could benefit from what I can do. But then you always have this thing at the back of your mind, what if we spoil our friendship where we built from? And I like what you say is, hey, maybe we can have somebody from within your own organization and you can have that kind of a buffer.
Right.
But build on that relationship and tell that person that, hey, you can trust me. I would not be doing this if I truly do not believe that we could help you. And that's what that's what for me is, there are many ways of lead generation, but using friends I thought was very, very, very interesting. That's for me what is stuck out from from this chapter. Right?
Yeah, and the real practical idea here is that people can take away that are watching is, they can dig into the chapter and they can see these other 8 ways.
Yeah.
A lot of times this one is the one that gets results the fastest.
Absolutely.
Because you've already got the relationship.
Indeed.
So it can be a lot of fun as well, to
Absolutely.
sort of transcend just the friendly part of the relationship.
Indeed.
So that's great.
For me, it's a neutral person that I love that part. So now, let's say you have these tactics that you have the ways of generating leads, and then of course you want to turn the leads into clients, right?
Yeah.
And in this chapter, and for me personally, a huge takeaway is the opportunity list, right? So yes, we have this, but can you give our audience a little bit more about what the opportunity list is and what made you come up with this in your career?
Oh, I'm happy to. So there's so many professionals, even full-time salespeople. So some people are professionals that they've got sales as a fractional part of the role, like consultants and lawyers, people like that. They would call it business development. Then there's other people that are sort of full-time salespeople, but they usually have some kind of delivery aspect of the role. Once something's been purchased, they have to hang around and help implement, at least in some way, right? So everybody's sort of this hybrid of delivery and growth. And one of the things that's most important about being really, really great at business development and growth is that you cannot manage it in your head. People really believe that it's, there's a lot of people who think, you're born with it when it comes to business development. Oh, Jane, she's just great at it. I couldn't do what she does. And that's just not true. It is a complex task. It's something that can be learned. It's something that can be improved. And one of the most critical elements of getting great at business development is writing down a list of opportunities and then moving through a process that is based on science, behavioral science, from what the buyer needs to say yes, as opposed to moving through a process that is based about us.
Yeah.
So if step one is writing down a list, some people have a list, in their CRM or whatever, but the thing that can be improved is a really practical takeaway is, instead of aligning your steps like meet client, talk to client, send proposal, pester them endlessly to see if they'll sign it. Those are based on our activities. What we've got in the book is what somebody needs to experience to say yes to something. They need to feel heard. They need to feel curious about how you might be able to solve their issues. They need to help craft the proposal with you, or they're not buying in. And then if we do those things, gaining approval should be the easiest thing. So
Yeah.
thing one, write the list. Thing two, organize the steps from the buyer side as opposed to from our salesperson side. Is this helpful?
Absolutely. And I think it also helps for the customer to see that you're putting yourself in their shoes as well. And
Yes.
for me that's what I really like, is the fact that first of all, of course, it can bring a kind of structure to your call, because you know what you need to be looking at and what you should be addressing. But if you can also share this with your customer, it gets them more engaged. And I personally think you're going to unearth a lot of things. It might be that it's a lot of work, but that homework is going to help you a lot, not just in getting the sale, but also making sure most of the time the problem starts after the sale is made, right? When you have to go into implementation. So the more you can do it, you're actually doing yourself a favor, the customer a favor, and more importantly, your internal colleagues in the different departments a favor.
Yes.
By getting the customers engaged in the process. And maybe I think you'll also be curious to see, what are your thoughts on the fact that the opportunity list could be something that you could share with your boss or with people within your own organization, saying that this is what I'm going to discuss with my customer. What are your thoughts on that one? Because I think that will make for some very interesting conversations with your internal clients, if I may, as well as the customers, and maybe it will help you smoothen the process in the sales. What do you think?
I love it. One of the funniest things about the Snowball system is because it's based on complete authenticity, someone should be able to share everything that they're doing in the book with their actual prospects. And, when we're selling our own services and talking about, potential training classes we could do for an organization, a lot of times they will all already have bought the Snowball system, right? And they already sort of know those steps I talked about. From our side, we need to listen and learn, then we need to create curiosity, then build everything together and gain approval. And sometimes because it's so authentic and transparent, sometimes the clients will say, hey, can we move to build everything together now? I think I'm sufficiently curious. So it's so funny to be able to talk about selling in such an authentic way that the client feels great about it, we feel great about it. So with that said, to your point, we should be able to share our list with all our colleagues internally.
Absolutely.
With our boss. If we're stuck, we should be able to say, gosh, I don't feel like I've got this client curious enough that they're not responding to my emails. What can I do? We should be able to talk about it with our clients directly, because when selling's done the right way, everybody is winning and everybody is doing things they couldn't do before. And that's what makes it easy to talk about it openly and transparently, because we've always got their best interest in mind. So I went a little deep on that, but is that where you were headed?
For me, it's perfect, because you said something which struck me in your next chapter, which was about closing the deal.
Yeah.
You hit the nail when you said build everything together.
Right.
And not kidding, that is what for me was stuck, is the fact that at the end of the day is, if you truly want to do business development, not in the short run, not to get a one-off, but a long-term business deal, the more you build things together, the better it is going to be for everybody concerned. And that for me was, so why do you say build everything together? Why do you think it struck you the most? Because for me, it's a natural extension from your opportunity list, and to get your customers to say, let's build together. So why did this initially strike you as being important, and what are the tips and tricks that you suggest to try to get to this stage with your customers?
Yeah, so fantastic question. The science behind this is just irrefutable, and it was a big study by Michael Norton and Small Star researchers, and they actually named a mental heuristic or a mental shortcut called the IKEA effect. IKEA, like the Swedish retailer. And to skip over all the control groups and experimental groups and all that, basically what they found was that we human beings buy into what we help create. We buy into what we help create. And that's so important in a sales context, because a lot of times people can feel like they're doing the prospect a favor by going off, spending 20 to 40 to 60 hours writing up a proposal with the big team and making, in some cases, dozens of assumptions about what the client really wants, and then emailing it over to the client. Well, the prospect, the first thing they look at is the money, right? They have no idea what scope and value and alignment of goals went into it. Now they're anchored on the money and if they like that or not. And the whole thing can go south from there. A much better approach is to offer the prospect really simple, do you like 1, 2, or 3, or do you like this or that kind of decisions? And usually it doesn't take that many to get to like 80% of the value. You might only have to ask 3 or 4, 6 questions. And by getting the client or prospect to advise you on which aspects they think would work, with you being the expert on pushing back if it's not quite right, or helping them shape what they are, giving your opinion, what happens is they're actually, through incremental yeses, they're buying into the proposal before they even see it. Then when they see it, it's, if there was a small issue, you can overcome it. And if there's not, they're ready to go. Is this helpful at all to walk through it in that way?
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying is we talk about it from different aspects. If we are talking now about the customer experience economy, the more you get the customers engaged, the more they're going to be your gung-ho fans. And going back to the IKEA example, usually when I talk in class, I always talk about the fact that I'm not very good with my hands. So essentially, when I put together my daughter's first bed, which was from IKEA, and I stepped back and I said, I'm the next best carpenter after Jesus. At which point in time, my wife pointed out that Jesus was not the carpenter, his father was. So there you go. But she had to bust my bubble. But I completely understand what you say is the factor that the more you get the customers engaged, the more they feel they are contributing to their own value. And I also, there's a very good example of going to the gym. You go to the gym, you burn the calories. If you think you look good, even though it's you doing the job as a customer, because I'm paying $50 to the gym or the equipment manufacturer, I feel good about it. And I then start talking to other people about it. So for me, so essentially, when you give very simple examples, it also applies even to more complex situations as well. And which brings me to my last chapter, and it really is a pity that we have to do this in an hour or 30 minutes each. But my takeaway from the last chapter, which is actually where you start talking about creating momentum in teams. And here, I like this part about coaching for success. And you talk about winning teams have something else in common. Everyone gives everyone coaching.
Yes.
Can you kind of elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, some research came out of the University of Michigan that found that the highest performing teams had a ratio of positive comments to constructive of 5.6 to 1. Medium performing teams was 2 to 1. It was a little less than that. And the worst performing teams in the 3 tiers actually had inverse relationships. They had more constructive than positive. And what I love about the math of peer comments, positive and constructive at the right ratio, is that you can just have so many more of them. So a great performing team, they've got one, I love baseball, I love the St. Louis Cardinals. One outfielder might give feedback on another outfielder, like, hey, I saw when you ran in for that, that sort of Texas leaguer that you started off one foot and the other, but I think you're more powerful when you start up this foot versus that foot, or, where you were shading for that hitter could have been changed a little bit. Well, if the manager or the defensive coach is the only person to provide feedback, they're trying to look at 9 different people. But everybody on the field, if they're helping each other, now we've got one person on the field looking at 8 others that might be able to provide feedback. So we got 8 times or 9 times the amount of feedback that can be given. So I love this idea of having people share information, share what they're struggling with, share what their goals are, share what their opportunity list is, share everything they're doing, because every single salesperson could help every single salesperson, in addition from coaching from the top.
Indeed.
And now we've really blown the doors off of our self-improvement.
Indeed. Mo, what is your thought about, when you talk about this, I can easily see when you give the example of the St. Louis Cardinals and you talk about learning from each other, but what about when you talk about building things together, but can you also apply in terms of coaching sometimes even your joint teams that you have with your customers? Is that something that you've seen in your experience as well?
Without a doubt. So like in the book, in our classes, we talk about 4 key ways to build everything together. So there's a specific stepwise process you can follow. Alignment on goals, alignment on the process, the timing that lines up with that goals, alignment on the team, who's going to do what by when on both sides, and then alignment on the money. How much is this going to cost, and maybe some other terms and conditions. Well, how peer review might work in that model is once say a team of 100 salespeople that rolls up into 8 managers, that rolls up into a chief revenue officer worldwide. Well, now we got 109 people or so that are a part of a big team. Well, once they learn that 4-step process, you might have a few people off the team that create a database of really great questions to ask for each one of the 4. We might create a database of, when we hear an objection over process, how do we handle that? When we get somebody that has a success story that worked the process from step 1 to step 4 and just crushed it and brought in one of the biggest deals we'd ever gotten before, and the client said, this is the best proposal I've ever seen. Well, partially because they wrote part of it. Then we might put that person up on a pedestal, and because they did such a great job of it, decode what they did, and maybe they give you a 30-minute webinar across all 109 people for that peer to share, hey, here's what I did well, these are the things I would tweak going forward, I could have done even better, and get into a dialogue about it. So when we can give people a process, that's just one example, great choice, by the way, and if we can help everybody get better at the process, that's where sort of the learning flywheel, if you will, just starts to roll on its own, where everybody's giving everybody feedback all the time. It starts with a common construct they're learning, and then sort of the abundance of information and sharing to help everybody do it better. Is this helpful?
Absolutely. And Mo, that was one of the fastest 30 minutes of a conversation.
Are we done already?
Absolutely. Mo, thank you so much for your time, and I really look forward to meeting you soon. But I'm sure that all our audiences who have taken a look at this, it's really worthwhile for you to consider buying this book. It is not all that expensive, but if you take a look at the sales equation, values, benefits over price, the benefits far outweigh the price that you're going to be paying for this in terms of value. So, Mo, thank you again, and have a wonderful day. And thank you, audience, for tuning in as well.
Mo Bunnell graduated from Ball State in 1990 and is the founder and CEO of Bunnell Idea Group, who has taught business development skills to over 12,000 people. You can learn Mo's methods in his book, The Snowball System, How to Win More Business and Turn Clients into Raving Fans, at snowballsystem.com, and get a gratis 8-part video training on creating demand at createdemandcourse.com.